Part 18. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 171. Chapter 171 Yesingling's version of the caged butterfly. Oh, yes. Everyone nodded. Yes, how could someone other than the late Queen Xiaoling sing a song like Butterfly in the Cage so well? The skills are high and the emotions required are too strong. Even just the words "the Queen's Legacy" song can cause huge psychological pressure on the singer. Just choose this one, someone said. But, someone else retorted, choosing this song doesn't mean we are deliberately making things difficult for others. Everyone knows that this song is not easy to sing. Although competition is competition, the meaning of this song to make things difficult for our opponents is too obvious. Anyone who asks his opponent to sing this song is too petty. Therefore, the "you request and I sing" session has gone on for several rounds, but no one has requested this song yet. If you let others sing, it would indeed be difficult, but now we let Yesinling sing. The person who suggested it said, if Yesinling can sing Xiaoling's Siren well, she might be able to sing the Siren well, Butterfly in a Cage, and I heard that she is a fan of Xiaoling. There will definitely be many people interested in hearing her sing this song. We are petitioning for the people. That's right, several people made a decision and elected representatives to the stage. The representative was also a newly debuted singer named Musayoxi. At this time, she stood in front of Xiaoling, raised the microphone and said with a smile, "Hello, Yesinling, the song I want you to sing is Butterfly in a Cage." Xiaoling was almost dizzy. What? Butterfly in the Cage? I hope you can sing this song, Musayoxi said. I heard that you are a fan of Xiaoling. Coincidentally, I am also a fan of Xiaoling. I have heard you sing her song. That song Siren is so nice, so I guess you'd be good at singing Caged Butterfly, so please. The scene was in an uproar. There was a lot of discussion in the audience. Butterfly in the Cage is too difficult. It is the pinnacle of the singing skills and emotions of Queen Xiaoling in her life. Since its release, many professional and amateur players who have tried to cover it have failed one after another. GG, even now, as long as it covers the song Cage Butterfly, it will inevitably attract a lot of ridicule and scolding. Now, Musayoxi asks her opponent to sing this song. Isn't it too cruel? However, the audience is really curious. Will Yesinling, who can sing Siren well, sing Caged Butterfly well and bring a miracle to everyone? The female host's eyes were bright, and she looked worried about the world being in chaos. Musayoxi, are you sure? Musayoxi nodded quietly. Xiaoling frowned slightly. This song, I don't dare to blaspheme, can you change it to another one? This is not the real reason. The real reason is that she never wants to sing this song again. This song was all she had in her previous life. It was a condensation of pain, too bloody, too dark, and born out of her most terrifying nightmare. She didn't know if she would lose control of her emotions once she sang again. Musayoxi said seriously, this is not blasphemy, it is another way to commemorate Xiaoling. Yesinling, aren't you also a fan of hers? Wouldn't it be good to do something for your idol? Moreover, it's on the playlist. This song is indeed on the playlist. The annual song list of Xingyun Song Club is based on the range of participating singers and producers, and the works of all singers and music producers are within the selection range. For the first time in her life, Xiaoling agreed with Wei Shaiyin's point of view. Feng Kun was simply a disaster. Without him, Caged Butterfly would not be on this year's playlist. The hostess smiled cunningly. Musayoxi is right, this is not considered blasphemy. Songs are meant to be sung, Yesinling, don't you think so? But if you think that if you can't compare to the dead queen, if you are not sure of singing well, you can automatically give up and admit defeat. Her words were hidden in their words, which aroused Xiaoling's anger. I never think that I am inferior to anyone, even the dead queen, she said coldly. As soon as these words came out, the audience was silent for a moment, and then, there were warm applause and boos at the same time. Well done Yasin Ling. Tisk, make a fool of yourself and pretend to be fat. Various sounds linger in the ears for a long time. The female host's smile is getting wider and wider. She is not afraid of conflicts and controversy when making a show, but she is afraid that it will not be popular. At this moment, the fierce reaction of the audience makes her even more energetic. Yasin Ling, she said immediately after finally waiting for the crowd to calm down a little, it seems that everyone is looking forward to you singing this song. How about you sing a song for us? You see, your points don't count either Fang Yu, she said, turning to look at the big screen. Your current points are 3,658. Although you are temporarily ranked first among all the newcomers this year, the gap between you and Xiaoyu, who is second, is very small. If you give up, not only will you not earn points, but you will also be deducted 500 points, and your ranking will fall behind Xiaoyu. Can you bear it? The female host asked passionately. The microphone in his hand was pointed at the audience. Countless spectators shouted excitedly, I can't bear it. Yasin Ling, the butterfly in the cage. Yasin Ling, the butterfly in the cage. The atmosphere was completely aroused. Xiaoling felt a little dizzy, as if this huge wave had surrounded her, leaving her unaware of where she was. Is it anemia, or did I not sleep well last night? She was swaying, and managed to take a few deep breaths before she could stand still amid the huge noise. She was not feeling well, and she didn't know how long she could last on stage, so she had to make a quick decision. Okay, I'll sing Caged Butterfly and we can start, she said quickly. The female host showed a satisfied expression and encouraged and praised her. Seeing that her goal was achieved, Muzioxi also cheered her up. Xiaoling endured the discomfort and watched them leave. She was the only one left on the huge stage. The lights dimmed, and blue-purple mist slowly rose in all directions, like a dream. She heard the melody of Butterfly in the Cage flowing like water, full of reminiscence and sad prelude, layer upon layer, looping back and forth. The beginning alone seemed to be tapping into the depths of people's hearts. Fang Kun is indeed a top producer in the industry. She felt it, raised the microphone, and closed her eyes slightly. Although she had heard Fang Kun's composition for Butterfly in the Cage before, it felt different when she actually sang along with it. So familiar. It was like an old friend whom she hadn't seen for many years, using music to greet her gently. With longing, sadness, understanding, regret and sorrow for her, but I also know her rhythm well and match her singing. Although it was the first time for Xiaoling to sing along with this accompaniment, she performed it perfectly, as if they had rehearsed it thousands of times before. Long time no see, old partner. Her head was still a little dizzy, as if she was in a dream of the past, and she sang softly, we had never met that year. With this lyrics, the sour and tingling feeling spreads. Will the ending will be different? The second sentence came out, the feeling of heartache became more intense, and I could hardly breathe. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 172. Chapter 172 Flightless Butterfly. Holding back the discomfort, Xiaoling sang the third line, as if the iris on the roadside lost in time can't tell whether that gentle you is real or a dream. Tears fell without warning. A fragmented vision flashed before my eyes. I don't know when and where in the summer, large clumps of irises bloomed wildly on the roadside in the wind. There was a young, tall man who smiled against the light and extended his hand to the girl in front of him. Come Xiaoling, come home with me. Xiaoling, come home with me. The voice was low and distant, like a spell, making her choke up. More images came to mind. Among the luxurious villas in the mountains, the man held the girl's hand and announced to many tribesmen, "This is Xiaoling, my adopted child. I hope you will treat her well." In the quiet study room, the man held his lap and taught her to practice calligraphy. In a garden full of roses, the man knelt down to pick out the thorns on the soles of the child's feet. His eyes were slightly lowered, gentle and focused. With tears blurring her vision, Xiaoling thought of many past events, and her singing voice gradually changed its tone, "You give me the crystal sky / the perfect dream." While singing, she seemed to go back in time and become that little girl again, with a graceful figure and stunning appearance. She jumps and spins lightly in the practice room, singing with a heavenly voice, year after year. Pei Xian came to see her. It was snowing outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. He took the soft woolen coat from his entourage and put it on her thin shoulders. He said, "It's cold. Please keep warm if you sweat." She put her hands around his neck, raised her head and kissed him affectionately. His body smelled faintly of tea, as well as the smell of sandalwood mixed with paper and ink in the study. Putting his arms around her waist, he pulled her closer and plundered her until she was almost suffocated. "Xiaoling," he murmured hoarsely, "my butterfly." A voice that is too unforgettable. Xiaoling's heart ached and she felt dizzy. She was on a smoky stage. The hand holding the microphone was trembling, and her singing voice was also trembling, "Turn into a butterfly / a butterfly that belongs to you." In a trance, the stage turned into another one, an open-air square with 100,000 people under the bright stars. She wore a pure white silk dress, light gold wings, her chin was raised high, and she sang arrogantly. From all directions, deafening cheers came. "Xiaoling! Xiaoling! Xiaoling!" Deep in her heart, something shattered, and her eyes stared blankly into the void. Where is this? Who is she? Is it the past life or this life? Tears flowed uncontrollably. Xiaoling walked in vain, unable to stand any more. She staggered to the edge of the stage and held onto the microphone stand fixed there. "For you, for you." She was crying, her voice was intermittent, and those tearful lyrics seemed to be engraved in the depths of her soul, "For you alone, just for you. Until that moment / when the earth falls apart / you tear apart the illusion / and push me into the cruel abyss." A newspaper appeared in front of me, with a shocking front-page headline: "Pei Xian, the head of the Pei family, is engaged to Wang Jingguan, the daughter of the yacht tycoon Wang family." Xiaoling couldn't believe it and rushed to find him like crazy. He held a very important board meeting at the emperor's headquarters. Big bosses gathered in the room and the atmosphere was solemn. She threw the newspaper in front of him. "Nonsense," an unknown old man said in a low voice. Xiaoling turned a deaf ear and angrily asked Pei Xian for an explanation. He was silent for a moment, and the wrinkles between his eyebrows were as sharp as a knife. "Xiaoling, this matter has nothing to do with you." She was so angry that she was shaking all over and making a fuss. The board meeting that day failed to continue, so Pei Xian dragged her home, threw her into the bedroom, and took possession of her tyrannically, but did not mention a word about the engagement. No matter how she pressed him, he always said, "It has nothing to do with you." She found many people for comment, but they did not dare to get involved in the dispute between her and Pei Xian, and they only hesitated. Only Feng Kun and Chu Chen persuaded her, "Xiaoling, what the boss means is that whether he is engaged or not, it is a political marriage and will not affect your relationship." "Doesn't it affect your relationship?" Joke. She scolded them, and soon she started arguing with Pei Xian even more fiercely, and even went to negotiate with Wang Jingguan, until Wang Jingguan died in an accident, and Pei Xian couldn't bear it anymore and imprisoned her. "You raised your finger slightly / quietly / break my wings." In the cold villa, he pressed her on the bed, ignored her fear and struggle, and humiliated her wantonly. Crystal sky / broken dreams. He locked her in a dark and narrow confinement room without a trace of light or sound. She wanted to shout but couldn't open her mouth. She wanted to struggle but couldn't even move a finger. The long dead silence was as if it had passed. For trillions of years, she didn't know whether she was dead or alive. She heard her weak heartbeat, the sound of blood flowing, saw huge monsters and spider webs, the scythe of death, and countless hallucinations. Then the door opened, and the man came in with light, like a god. Xiaoling, he whipped it off, and the severe pain and pleasure made her tremble. He leaned forward and touched her face. His tone was cold and gentle. All your joy and pain are given by me, everything you have belongs to me. Xiaoling cried out and sang with difficulty, the butterfly in the cage. Flyless butterfly. The body slid down little by little, half kneeling on the stage. She felt the burning pain in her ankle, and there was a wound there, a wound worn out by the gold chain worn by Peizian himself over the long years. The flightless butterfly. She tried her best to control herself so as not to burst into tears. The spreading spider web. Bloody wings / ashes wishes. The flightless butterfly / imprisoned in the spider web. Can't escape the prison. Wait. Die. The last line of lyrics falls. She knelt down on the stage, her body numb, and she couldn't stop crying intermittently. For a brief moment, my mind went blank, as if the wind from the fall that day kept passing by. No, that's not right, it's not blank, but there are many memories roaring, rolling, clamoring, lightning, and overwhelming. All tenderness and pain. When they first met, that summer in the orphanage where iris flowers were blooming, he held her hand and took her home. When they were together at the age of 13, he said that he would be good to her throughout his life. At the International Music Awards, he sitting in the guest seat, I listened with all my attention to her singing the song Perfect Dream written for him. There was also the fateful day when he slapped her to the ground in the entrance hall of his home and angrily asked her why she wanted to murder Wang Jingguan. Cage, despair, madness, collapse. Xiaoling did not dare to dwell on the nightmare of her last year. She only remembered that she jumped off the stage and was reborn. Farewell to Xiaoling's life and become Yexinling. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 173. Chapter 173 Morning. Xiaoling raised the back of her hand to wipe her tears, remembering that she was still on the stage. This look was probably embarrassing and ugly. There were so many spectators, but no one applauded. She sniffed and stood up unsteadily, laughing at herself in her heart. Xiaoling, look at you, how did you end up like this after taking off the skin that Peizian held and cared for in his hands? Finally she stood firm, and she heard bursts of crying. Strange, hasn't she stopped crying? Subconsciously, she touched her face again. It was a little swollen from crying, and there was a slight stinging pain, but she was indeed no longer crying. Looking up and looking forward, she saw many people in the auditorium crying, so engrossed in crying. So ugly, even worse than she was just now. Xiaoling felt helpless and confused. The female host came forward, her eyes were red and swollen, and she looked like she had cried. Xiaoling, you are really... She paused for a moment and swallowed back her tears. You sang so well, so many people were moved. I cried, even me. This is the most touching live performance I have ever heard since I became a host. Can you tell us how you interpreted this song? Xiaoling was still in a trance, but so many years of performance experience allowed her to respond without thinking. Singing should be done with all the heart. The hostess was obviously very satisfied with the answer. She poured out her compliments and asked her many questions. When did she start to like Xiaoling? What influence did Xiaoling have on her music style? What are her future plans, etc.? Xiaoling was absent-minded and answered one by one. The past was still tumbling in her mind. In the end, she didn't even remember what questions the female host asked. After an unknown amount of time, the hostess finally let her go and sent her off with warm applause. Xiaoling walked backstage one step at a time. She almost fell down when going down the stairs, but was helped by someone. Xiaoling, be careful, it was Wei Shaiyin's voice, which sounded so far away. Why are you still crying? Xiaoling wanted to say that she was not crying. Her tears had stopped just now. Then she felt something being stuffed in her hand. She looked down and saw that it was the silk handkerchief that Wei Shaiyin had decorated on her suit pocket. Taza, it's so ugly that the emperor's people will see it as a joke, he said. She mechanically took the silk handkerchief to wipe her eyes, and then she realized that tears welled up again at some point, and her hands couldn't stop trembling again. She paused, covered her face with the silk handkerchief, and let the tears flow freely. Okay, Wei Shaiyin was at a loss. You are so old, why are you still crying like a child? She simply fell on top of him and howled. Xiaoling, you. He was too anxious to speak incoherently. Don't do this, people will think I'm bullying you. No, that's not right, you're so dirty, I have mysophobia, please let me go. She ignored him and cried harder. Wei didn't know what kind of life she had experienced. He didn't know that during the long years of being imprisoned by Pei Zion, she didn't even dare to cry properly, so that she had long forgotten how to cry. Wei will never know the depth of her grief. Wei Shaiyin stopped trying to persuade her and put his hands around her body stiffly, patting her back gently a few times as if coaxing a child. After an unknown amount of time, Xiaoling cried until she lost her last bit of strength and choked back her voice. Ancestor, are you finally well? Wei Shaiyin was relieved and did not ask why she was crying. Can you still walk? Xiaoling nodded. He said, come back to the dressing room with me. It won't be embarrassing to cry like this in the corridor. Only then did she realize that the people coming and going around her were secretly looking at her with strange looks, with gossipy expressions on their faces. She wiped her face with the silk handkerchief in her hand and followed Wei Shaiyin to the dressing room. By the way, why did you find me? Her voice was hoarse, and her vocal cords ached when she opened her mouth. Shouldn't you be resting in the dressing room? I'm worried because you cried like that when you sang Butterfly in the Cage. Come and take a look. Wei Shaiyin took off her coat with a look of disgust as she walked away. You've ruined the latest suit. She thought of his mysophobia, looked at the large patches of tears and snot on the coat, and laughed out of misery. Wei Shaiyin glared at her angrily, but his worried eyes softened. Go back to the dressing room. The moment the door was opened, everyone turned to look at Xiaoling. There were all kinds of looks, some were surprised, some were shocked, some were jealous, some were curious, some were disdainful. Only Luoluo rushed forward without any distractions. Xiaoling, you sing so well, it's like Xiaoling comes back to life. Don't talk nonsense, she scolded in a low tone. Her tone was very bad. The truth that Luoluo inadvertently revealed made her tremble with fear. She looked around subconsciously and saw that all those people looked as normal. They were envious, and she felt relieved. Only when I accidentally caught a glimpse of a person, I suddenly became nervous. Fenken. He was leaning in the corner of the dressing room, drinking a glass of water quietly, his eyes falling on her with a thoughtful expression. He was as calm and taciturn as ever, wearing that black formal suit, like an unobtrusive aristocratic gentleman. Only she knew how keen he was and how terrifying his judgment was. Xiaoling wasn't sure if he saw any clues. At this moment, even if he called her by her real name, she wouldn't be too surprised. He was so familiar with her, even more familiar with her singing style and every detail than Pei Zion. They had worked together for 10 years and were part of the legendary group. He could probably tell which song she was singing when he closed his eyes. Xiaoling didn't know how exposed she was when she sang Butterfly in the Cage. There was a broadcast screen in the dressing room. Judging from Feng Kun's appearance, she must have watched the whole thing. She couldn't help but feel frightened, thinking carefully, the cage butterfly she sang this time should be very different from the time she committed suicide. After all, her experience and mood had changed a lot, so it shouldn't be as sad as before. Xiaoling thought unconfidently. Furthermore, reincarnation is too unbelievable. She changed her appearance and voice, hoping that he would not go there and not recognize her. Even though she wanted so much to go to him and tell him that she was okay. Xiaoling glanced at him with some nostalgia, but felt that she shouldn't show such a look, so she looked away guiltily. Luoluo was still chirping in his ears, like a happy bird. She looked down at the child. Lolo, I'm tired. Luoluo was startled and then realized, ah, yes, I was so engrossed in singing just now. It's time to take a good rest. I won't disturb you anymore. I'll come back to you after you have rested. As he said that, he jumped up and down. Return to the Emperor's area. Wei Shaiyan also said goodbye to her and went to change her clothes that were soaked by her crying. Xiaoling walked to her seat and sat down in a daze. Looking at myself in the mirror, my face is completely covered with flowers. It is so ugly. Isn't it even half as beautiful as in my previous life? But even so, why did Pei Ziyan still pursue her, and why did he have to find so many substitutes at all costs? Pei Ziyan, do you know that she is very sad? End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 174. Chapter 174. Who are you? The tears have dried up and cannot be shed anymore. The past is like smoke. Sister Xiaoling, the assistant Wai Wei's voice sounded cautiously, do you want me to get you some water to wash your face? Her thoughts were interrupted. Xiaoling then remembered how inappropriate it was for an artist to have such a face. She was about to nod in agreement when she heard a bang and the dressing room door was pushed open. Everyone turned to look. At that moment, she felt that her throat was sore and she could not speak. If there is one person in this world that she never wants to meet, it is him, but if there is one person that makes her toss and turn, unable to let go of love or hate, it can only be him, only him, Pei Ziyan. Her gods, her demons, her everything. Looking at the tall figure in front of the door, Xiaoling felt that her body was stiff and she couldn't breathe. He was wearing a half-worn light gray round neck sweater, which looked familiar. She subconsciously looked at the corner of the shirt, and sure enough, there was a small, inconspicuous stain there, which she had accidentally spilled while drinking. My heart was clenched and throbbing. He is still wearing this sweater, how come? Having been with him for 16 years, she knew how particular he was, and would immediately throw away anything with the slightest flaw, although back then, this sweater was the only exception. At that time, Xiaoling insisted that he keep the sweater because she liked the soft texture very much and often nestled comfortably in his arms and couldn't bear to leave. But now things have changed, and the Xiaoling who would toss and turn in his arms and act mischievously, Ling is dead. Why is he still wearing it? Moreover, it was on such an occasion. Pei Ziyan never allows himself to dress casually in public. When he goes out, he always has a formal style and a cold and hard aura. But at this moment, he made himself so embarrassed. Could it be? Pei Ziyan, how urgent are you to come out? For whom? She looked at him blankly, and in her ears, Xia Yu's surprised voice came, Brother Ziyan, why are you here? You came to pick me up, right? That's great. I will follow you as soon as the show is over. As he said that, he went up to meet him. Unexpectedly, Pei Ziyan didn't look at her. His sharp gaze quickly passed through the dressing room and locked on Xiaoling. Xiaoling's heart trembled, and she instinctively wanted to escape, but she seemed to be frozen by something and couldn't move. Watching him strode to her in front of her eyes. "Who are you?" His tone was cold, with a storm raging in his eyes. Xiaoling was frightened by him, her mouth was dry, her tongue was burnt, and her mind was blank. "Say. Who are you?" He grabbed her wrist with such force that he almost crushed her bones. The intense pain brought Xiaoling back to her senses, and she desperately pulled her hand back. "Pei Xian, let go." He ignored her and used more strength. His eyes were as red as a ferocious beast, as if he wanted to tear her into pieces. "Who are you? Who are you? How can you sing Caged Butterfly, so like her? You actually sang the second half of Butterfly in the Cage. How could you possibly sing it?" She was almost breaking into a cold sweat from the pain, but there was a thunderclap in her heart. The second half of Butterfly in a Cage. How could she forget that at her last concert in her previous life, she only sang half of Caged Butterfly before she was murdered? The second half of this song only exists in legend. But today, at the Xingyun singing concert, she was aroused by so many thoughts and lost her emotions that she actually sang the second half of Caged Butterfly that has never been released to the world. Sky. Her whole body was so cold that even her blood seemed to coagulate. Pei Xian pressed her into the small space of the dressing table and asked loudly, "Tell me. Who are you?" Faced with him like this at close range, the nightmare scenes from the past resurfaced, and Xiaoling panicked. "Pei Xian, you let me go. I am nobody. Let me go." Feng Kun rushed up to pull him away. "Boss. Calm down. She is Yexin Ling from Tianyi, not the person you want." Pei Xian was unmoved at all, as if he wanted to eat her alive. "How could you possibly sing the second half of the song? It's me. I gave her the lyrics." Feng Kun pulled Pei Xian hard. In fact, Feng Kun was also shocked. He had never given her the lyrics. The second half of Butterfly in the Cage was a top secret that no one knew except him and Pei Xian. However, the girl in front of him who looked like Xiaoling sang came out. What does this mean? The answer is ready to come out, but Feng Kun is more concerned about protecting her this time than the truth. "She sang according to the lyrics and score I gave her. It's normal for her to be able to finish the second half of the song," Feng Kun said loudly to Pei Xian. However, Pei Xian couldn't listen at all, and still asked like crazy, "Who are you?" Xiaoling felt that her wrist had been broken, and the pain was crazy, and she screamed hysterically, "Who do you care about me? Who am I, Pei Xian? Everyone can sing Butterfly in the Cage, I just copy it. Just sing along with the lyrics and the music." "You're lying." He was furious, and without warning, he pinched her chin with his other hand, forcing her to raise her head. "You're lying. No, it couldn't be the music score Feng Kun gave you. How could you know the second half of Butterfly in the Cage that has never been released? Who are you? Maybe it's because I've been missing her for too long, and I don't want to believe her anyway." The lyrics came from Feng Kun. He knew it was absurd, but he wanted to hear her give a different answer. There was a roar that sounded like a roar. Xiaoling didn't know if it was an illusion. His voice was trembling slightly. She closed her eyes suddenly, not wanting to reveal any of her emotions. Feng Kun's tone was filled with rare anxiety. "Boss, let go first and calm down." But so pale and feeble. But Pei Xian still didn't let go. A chill ran up Xiaoling's back. She can't let him discover her true identity, absolutely not. Pei Xian's possessiveness was so terrifying that she couldn't imagine what she would face if he was captured. Xiaoling forced herself to calm down. Finally, she mustered up the courage to speak. "You." His chin was clamped by him, and it was very difficult to speak. "Please, let go of me first, and I will tell you how." I sang the second half of the song. Of. As soon as he finished speaking, he felt the grip on his wrist and jaw loosen at the same time. She didn't have time to think too much, she used all her potential to knock him away, and ran towards the door while crawling on the ground. "Stop," he shouted angrily. "How dare she stay?" Knocking over numerous tables and chairs along the way, he walked out the door and ran along the corridor in a panic. The sound of his chasing footsteps came from behind, heavy and dense, getting louder and closer. Xiaoling ran desperately. There was an elevator not far ahead. As long as she could take the elevator to the first floor before he caught up. With the bodyguards assigned to her by Lilei, she would be safe. However, God did not fulfill people's wishes. The moment she entered the elevator and pressed the door closing button, a tall figure squeezed in. The elevator door closed with a ding. Xiaoling felt the color drain from her face. She looked at the man in front of her, her body moving backwards and forwards, clinging to the cold metal wall. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 175. Chapter 175 Lover's Tears. In the elevator. Pei Ziyan forced himself in front of Xiaoling and grabbed her collar. "Want to escape? How could you escape? How dare you sing such a song? Who are you, who are you? Let me go." His breath sprayed on her face, making her scared and crazy. "Pei Ziyan, let me go. I am Yexing Ling from Tianyi, I am from Tianyi. Let me go, please let me go." She struggled desperately and reached out to open the elevator door. He suppressed her fiercely, even crazier than her. Suddenly, the lights went out and the surroundings fell into darkness. The elevator shook violently, and suddenly, it fell downwards. Xiaoling screamed at the sudden sense of imbalance, but in an instant, she felt someone pulling her into his arms, protecting her tightly with his body and arms. The elevator continued to fall at an extremely fast speed. It was an obvious free fall, a sign of crash. Is she going to die here? Having been reborn for less than 2 years, are you going to die here with him? A sense of absurdity arose in my heart, empty, sad and desperate. She closed her eyes and waited for death. This time, she could not hear the passing wind, only his heartbeat, fast and clear. A boom sound. A huge impact came and they fell heavily to the ground. It was still dark all around. For a moment, she felt that she was dead, but something was wrong. Strong pain came, and she felt that every bone in her body was about to fall apart, and every blood vessel had burst. However, she is still alive. I don't know how long it took for Xiaoling to recover from being thrown into a daze. She tried to move her body, but found that she was still hugged tightly by Pei Ziyan. He had not let go of her from beginning to end. "How are you?" she asked eagerly in the darkness where she couldn't see her fingers. Even now, she found that she still cared about him. A terrible suspicion suddenly arose in my heart: if he was injured. No, he must be fine. He has always been so tyrannical, how could anything happen? What's wrong with you? Tell me something. Xiaoling's tone became more urgent, and she struggled hard again, but still couldn't break free of his restraint. "Pei Ziyan. Are you injured anywhere? Tell me. Don't move." His voice was dull and hoarse, which was different from usual. "Are you okay?" Xiaoling's voice was trembling. He didn't answer, and then she felt a drop of some liquid fall on the back of her hand. Her heart also trembled violently along with the liquid. "Pei Ziyan. You are bleeding. Where are you injured? You." The light flickered a few times and then turned on. She turned her head eagerly to look at the back of her hand, and her words suddenly stopped. "That's not blood. It was a tear." She followed him from the age of 12, fell out with him at the age of 28, died, and was hunted down by him several times after rebirth, and dealt with him over the years. She thought she had seen all his faces, gentle, domineering, kind, and bloodthirsty. I have seen him smile, I have seen him angry, I have seen him be calm and unhurried, and I have also seen him be as violent as a beast. However, there was only one thing she had never seen before. She had never seen him cry, not even once. That drop of tear fell into Xiaoling's heart like lava, so hot that she couldn't bear it. Pei Xian, why are you crying? Is it only in the deepest darkness, where no one can see, that you can cry silently like you do now? Xiaoling's heart shrank in pain. If that drop of tear hadn't happened to fall on the back of her hand, would she never have known that he was also a human being of flesh and blood, not a devil, and he also had moments of sadness? Pei Xian, why are you in pain? Who is it for? She was motionless in his arms, her heart shaking and full of sorrow. She had never seen him sad in so many years, so she didn't know that she would be so sad when he was sad. Unknowingly, Xiaoling reached out her hand little by little, wanting to hug him and comfort him, but the moment her fingertips touched the hem of his clothes, she stopped like an electric shock. She didn't dare. She no longer dared to hug him as before and express her joy, anger, and sorrow unscrupulously. There is a huge gap between them, love, hate, life and death. Fingertips gently touched the surface of his clothes, carefully absorbing the little bit of soft warmth. She didn't dare to move forward even an inch, for fear that he would notice, and that she would lose control at some point and reveal too many emotions. I do not know how long it has been. The elevator door opened with a bang without warning. Many noisy voices came like a flood. Be careful, the elevator fault has not been completely eliminated, be careful in front of the door, don't be careless. Are the people inside okay? Fortunately, it's hovering on the first floor. If it fell to the underground garage, it would hit the ground directly and it would be shattered to pieces. Don't talk nonsense, the Emperor's Mr. Pei is also in there. Xiaoling subconsciously raised her head and looked towards the source of these sounds. I saw that the corridor outside the elevator door was crowded with people, including those from Tianyi and Emperor, as well as many TV station staff and unknown faces. They were talking and vying to look over. Then, the excitement of the crowd subsided, and shock was written on everyone's face. Oh my God! Someone whispered in disbelief, I read that right, isn't that Ye Xingling from Tianyi? She and Mr. Pei from the Emperor, them, how could they hug each other? She then remembered that she was still being held in Pei Xian's arms, and was a little dazed for a moment. She is an artist, and Pei Xian is an arrogant big shot. It is definitely big news now that they are like this. No, there are already reporters who can't wait to raise their cameras, click the shutter, and the dazzling light of the flash flashes by. Please don't take pictures, it was a staff member from Tianyi who stopped in front of the reporter. Sir, please put down your camera. There was also Feng Kun, with a stern look on his face. But the reporter persisted, I have permission to visit the concert, no one can stop me from doing interviews. As he said this, he rushed forward with his camera in hand, trying to break through the defense line of Feng Kun and the staff. The scene suddenly became chaotic. At this moment, Xiaoling saw a familiar figure break in. She raised her hand and snatched away the reporter's camera. Ignoring his exclamations and protests, she pulled out the memory card inside in a few clicks, and then, he slammed the camera against the wall and dropped it to the ground. With a bang, the camera fragments flew everywhere and was completely scrapped. Li Lei. It's the boss of Tianyi. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 176. Chapter 176 Quarrel. There were exclamations of surprise from the crowd again. This sudden situation made Xiaoling stunned. Li Lei, wasn't he abroad? When did he come back? With a thought, Lilei had already pushed aside all the crowds, walked directly to the elevator door, stretched out his hand, pulled her out of Pei Xian's arms, and pulled her into his own. His strength was so strong that Xiaoling staggered and her arm almost broke due to pain. The tip of her nose hit his chest and she groaned. Lilei looked at Pei Xian coldly, "Don't touch my people." His voice was gloomy, making those who heard it shudder. For a moment, the surroundings fell silent. In the elevator, Pei Xian was still half kneeling, motionless, maintaining the posture of hugging Xiaoling tightly just now. Hearing Lilei's words, he turned his head and looked at her who was protected in Lilei's arms. His eyes were deep and painful, his eyes were slightly red, and there was so much sadness that he could not get rid of. Xiaoling's heart tightened, and she stared at him intently, as if possessed by a demon. Lilei held her hand tightly and turned her around without any further explanation, striding out. She was led by him and stumbled along, walking through the long corridor and underground garage. He threw her into the passenger seat of the modified off-road vehicle and closed the door. Then he got into the cab from the other side, started the engine without saying a word, and sped away. Outside the car window, there is a vast expanse of night scenery, full of light, both illusory and real. Xiaoling was in a trance, with all the past and present events still echoing in her mind. The name Pei Xian was like a curse, lingering, his kindness to her, his gentleness and cruelty, happiness and nightmares. Unexpectedly, her tears came again. Falling. Lilei caught a glimpse of her crying in the rearview mirror. Her tears fell silently, drop by drop, as if hot lava was burning his heart. What is the relationship between her and Pei Xian? Why did Pei Xian hold her so closely? And why was she crying so fragilely? Lilei didn't know the reason. He pursed his thin lips tightly into a straight line. He drove the car very fast, running through several red lights on the road. Along the way, drivers kept swerving, honking and yelling, and there were dangers everywhere. However, Xiaoling was unaware of this. She still missed Pei Xian's tears in her heart. It turned out that he would really be sad if she died. That's enough. She was crying, with an ugly smile on her face, and then she covered her face and sobbed uncontrollably. Lilei drove the car back to the downstairs of the apartment, and the security supervisor on duty came up to him and wanted to open the door for them. He didn't unlock the car door. Xiaoling stopped crying and raised her head with tears blurred. Only then did she realize that she had arrived at her residence. She reached out to push the car door, but did not push it open. She turned to look at Lilei in confusion. Lilei said, "You owe me an explanation." He dealt with official duties day and night, just to return to the country to reunite with her as soon as possible. However, when he rushed back from abroad all the way, what he saw was his beloved woman in another man's arms. Her hand gently grasped the corner of the man's clothes, cautiously, as if she was afraid of breaking the most precious treasure in the world. At that time, a huge gloom enveloped Lilei's mind. That situation was definitely not Pei Xian's unilateral wishful thinking. He turned to look at Xiaoling. "What do you like about him? Do you like that he is cruel and rough and keeps women everywhere?" Xiaoling's body trembled slightly, she bit her lip and said nothing. "What do you like about him?" "Too much. I like the hand he extended to her when they first met, the first time she saw him when she woke up every morning, the way he taught her to write step by step, and the way he would always indulge her no matter what outrageous things she did. Often dreaming back at midnight, these beautiful fragments of the past are intertwined with horrific nightmares, becoming the most secret scars buried deep in her heart. She originally thought that she had let go and could cut off the relationship in her previous life and no longer miss her, but his tears made everything fall apart. She couldn't control herself from feeling heartache. Lilei raised her chin and kissed her without any warning. She was frightened and struggled subconsciously, but his hands and feet were firmly suppressed by him. Xiaoling glared at him angrily. Li Lei's voice was hoarse. Yasin Ling, don't forget whose woman you are now. No matter how good my temper is, there is a limit. He could tolerate her small offenses and the cuteness of ignoring authority when acting like a child, but the only thing that couldn't be tolerated was that when she was by his side, she was still thinking about another man. A long time ago, he had been vaguely aware that she had someone else in her heart. However, it was not until he witnessed her in Pei Xian's arms tonight that he realized how heart-gnawing jealousy was. Yasin Ling, you are not allowed to see him again. He raised his hand to wipe away the tears from the corners of her eyes, but she pushed him away. Are you restricting my freedom? She asked coldly. This one. The night was too chaotic, and she already had a lot of worries, and she had no extra energy to comfort Li Lei. However, he pressed forward step by step, adding new shackles to her already overwhelmed body. Not allowed. Did he think she wanted to see Pei Xian? Did he ever think about it? If Pei Xian was determined to come to her, how could she escape? Just now in the dressing room, when Pei Xian forced her and chased her away, where was Li Lei? The matter has come to this, but you come to accuse her? She looked at him even more unkindly. Li Lei was very angry. You like him that much? Are you stupid? He has found so many women, and each of them is just a substitute for the dead Queen Xiaoling. Are you very proud that you look like Xiaoling? Yasin Ling, I tell you, Pei Xian doesn't love you at all, he only loves a dead person. Over the past few days, Old Man Bao had reported the investigation results to him one after another, and he gradually learned a lot about the story of Pei Xian and the dead Queen Xiaoling. He wanted to save his beloved woman from being hunted by the devil, but unexpectedly, she was deceived by the devil, and the person he really loved was not her at all. Yasin Ling, wake up. His words were like steel needles piercing her heart. There were still tears in the corners of her eyes. Open the door and let me out of the car. Yasin Ling. Get me out of the car, she shouted loudly and smashed the car window with all her strength, not wanting to stay even a minute longer. Who does Pei Xian love? He was so infatuated with her in his previous life, but he turned a blind eye or even hurt her in this life. Now she is just a substitute for her former self. Even if she is still alive, that love has been declared dead and has completely disappeared. Pei Xian didn't love Yasin Ling. This fact was exposed by Li Lei mercilessly. She was too painful and tired to think about it. Li Lei looked at her sadly. She smashed the car window so hard that there were bruises under her white palms. He pursed his lips tightly and silently unlocked the car door. As soon as Xiaoling was free, she got out of the car and ran towards the apartment building without looking back, leaving Li Lei alone in the boundless darkness of the night. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 177. Chapter 177 Pei Xian's Invitation. Li Lei suddenly didn't know what he was doing back here. He lit a cigarette, and the rising smoke confused his handsome face. After sitting in the car for a long time, he dialed a phone. Hello, Sutang, are you asleep? I want to talk to you about something. The scene in the elevator gave him an unprecedented sense of crisis. He had always been sure of himself. My skills in coaxing girls have become less confident. How can I impress a girl like Xiaoling? How can I make her give up? Maybe you can find the answer by asking Sutang, who is also a woman. He loves Xiaoling and wants to monopolize everything about her, body and soul. Xiaoling returned to the apartment and had an uneasy sleep that night. When she woke up the next day, her head still hurt. She walked into the bathroom and saw herself looking haggard in the floor-to-ceiling mirror, with a pale face and a wrinkled coat. Then I remembered that I didn't take off my clothes at all when I went to sleep last night, so I started taking off my clothes one by one. When I got to my shirt, I realized that something was missing from my wrist. What is missing is the sponsorship of a luxury brand, a gold and mother-of-pearl women's watch, which is expensive. After the concert, she has to return it to the sponsor. If she loses it, she must pay the price. Xiaoling couldn't help but rub her forehead and rummaged through the pile of clothes for a while, but couldn't find it. She went back to the bedroom and searched all the places she could think of, on the bed, on the carpet, on the cabinet, but still couldn't find it. This is trouble. She couldn't afford that female watch at all. For a young star like her who had just debuted, even if she made good money, she spent more money. She squandered all her monthly salary as soon as she got it, leaving no balance at all. What should I do? Borrow it from Lilei? Even though they had just quarreled, Xiaoling knew that there was no doubt that he would give her a huge sum of money without hesitation, and she wouldn't have to pay it back at all. But if that's the case, what's the difference between being taken care of by him? Once upon a time, she was squandering Pei Xian's property so unscrupulously. In her last life, although Xiaoling had a net worth of hundreds of millions of dollars, she had never used even a penny of it. All her expenses went to Pei Xian's personal account. He had given her a black gold supplementary card, and even when she bought him gifts, she would swipe that supplementary card. At that time, she didn't think there was anything wrong. They didn't distinguish each other, right? But later I realized how wrong I was. In his eyes, she will always be just his subordinate. Now, after reviving her life, Xiaoling never wants to live like that again. She is who she is and does not depend on anyone. Therefore, no matter what, she would not ask Lilei for money, but how to solve the current problem. While I was thinking about it, my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. Xiaoling pressed the answer button. On the other end of the phone, a familiar voice came, low and magnetic. Is that Xingling? That is Pei Xian's voice. Her heartbeat suddenly accelerated, and Xiaoling felt that the hand holding the phone was shaking slightly. Pei Xian, how did he know her phone number? What's the point of calling her at this time? Xingling on the other end of the phone, he slowly read her name again. She took a deep breath. What do you want? Aren't you going to ask who I am? His voice was neither fast nor slow, not at all crazy or violent like last night. It seems that you have recognized me. Should I say that you are sensitive to sounds, or, we are destined? His last half sentence made her almost throw the phone away. Stop talking nonsense. Her tone was unstable. Pei Xian, I don't have time to chat with you. If nothing happens, I will die. He laughed softly, and there seemed to be a bit of bitterness, helplessness, and subtle nostalgia in his laughter. How long has it been? No one dares to speak to me in this tone. Xingling, it's the second one. Xiaoling fell silent. He knew who the first one was, and so did she. Xingling, he spoke again, you left a women's watch with me. Xiaoling suddenly realized why the watch was missing. She probably lost it accidentally when she was trying to pull it off with him in the elevator last night, and he accidentally picked it up. She couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. It was great to know its whereabouts. After she got it back, she no longer had to worry about the high compensation. However, as soon as this thought came to mind, a problem emerged. The thing was in Pei Xian's hand. How to get it? Pei Xian, she hesitated, then said, please return it to me, okay? I felt uneasy, fearing that he would reject me. His voice was still low. Okay. After a slight pause, he added, let's make an appointment, Xingling. I hope to return it to you in person. It was then that she suddenly understood his purpose. Pei Xian, he wanted to see her, and that watch was just a bait for the hunter. Xiaoling instinctively refused. No, He interrupted her, if you don't come to get it, forget it. She knew that he had always been a man of his word, and now that his words had come to this, there was no room for change. But how dare she go to see him? Since his rebirth, he had tried to capture her several times. After suffering so much, how could she let herself get involved in danger again? But, that watch. She didn't know what to do. Pei Xian's voice sounded at the right time. I just want to chat with you. I don't mean any harm. You decide the time and place. No malice. The past events flashed through her mind, and Xiaoling frowned, anger rising in her heart. You did so many cruel things to me in the past, how can you say you didn't have any malice, in the past life, in this life? They all hurt her deeply. I won't do it if I say no. I, Pei Xian, have never broken my promise. You never broke your promise? You. She almost sneered out loud, remembering how he promised her each other and would be good to her for the rest of his life, but in the end he tortured her so cruelly that she was worse than dead. However, thinking of her current identity, she swallowed back the question she was about to blurt out. If you don't know where to make an appointment, just make an appointment at Henjiun Commercial Center. There is a good coffee shop on the third floor, an open lobby, and a lot of people coming and going. You don't have to be afraid of what I will do to you. 2 afternoons. Yes, I'll wait for you. His voice was low and gentle, just like many years ago. Whenever she was in doubt, she would always make a decision thoughtfully. Xiaoling said nothing and hung up the phone silently. All morning long, she hesitated whether to go or not. Seeing that the appointed time was getting closer and closer, she finally said to herself, go ahead. Since she couldn't afford to lose the watch, she had no choice but to get it back. She went to get her things back, not to see him. It was just this time, and it wouldn't happen next time. She got up, found a set of clothes that fit her best, put them on, and walked out of the room. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 178. Chapter 178. Have you ever liked anyone? That coffee shop is located in the city center. When Xiaoling arrived, she found that Pei Xian had already arrived. She recognized him at a glance. In the dim light, he sat quietly in the corner by the picture window, with a pot of black tea in his hand. He did not drink it, but looked out the window with his face slightly sideways, showing a thoughtful expression. Outside the window, there were lush broad-leaved trees and decorative waterfalls, making him look gentler than usual. However, she knew that it was just an illusion given by the tiger when he was resting. Xiaoling secretly took a deep breath and walked over. Seeing Ling, he saw her, and the corners of his lips curved slightly, changing from the madness last night. I'm glad you can come. But Xiaoling was not too happy. Just sitting down opposite him and being locked by his gaze made her feel numb and nervous. She made up her mind to make a quick decision and leave as soon as she got the watch. He called the waiter and asked her, "What would you like to drink?" She glanced at the menu handed over by the waiter, not in the mood to take a closer look, and said casually, "Lemon." Halfway through her words, she suddenly realized that she had liked drinking lemonade in her previous life, and she was afraid that he would notice the clues and panic. Then he hurriedly changed his words, "A cup of Mand coffee, thank you." The waiter responded and soon brought the coffee. Pei Xian looked at her and said, "You are a singer. You should take good care of your voice. It's better to drink less coffee." His tone was calm, just like an ordinary friend chatting casually. Xiaoling really doesn't drink much coffee. The reason is, as he said, to protect her throat. She didn't touch almost all stimulating drinks. This was a habit she had developed around him many years ago. In the blink of an eye, such a long time passed, and things changed and people changed. She was in a daze, lowered her head, picked up the coffee cup and took a sip. A bitter taste instantly filled her mouth. She put down the cup reflexively, took a breath, and her whole face wrinkled. "Are you not used to drinking?" he asked with some inquiry. How dare Xiaoling tell him that she never drinks Mand. She ordered this kind of coffee just because she liked it? This kind of coffee was Wei Shaiyin's favorite. After getting along with Wei Shaiyin for a long time, when she mentioned coffee, this was the first thing she thought of. Normally, Wei Shaiyin's face would not change even when drinking. How did she know that she would suffer like this? She responded to Pei Xian's question, "I'm used to drinking. I just forgot to add sugar." Pei Xian smiled slightly. Xiaoling did not dare to look at him and lowered her head to look for the sugar packet. However, the moment her fingers were about to touch the sugar packet, someone took it away first. "It's Pei Xian." She raised her head and looked at him in surprise. He lowered his eyes and concentrated on tearing open the sugar packet and pouring it into the coffee for her. "One pack was not enough, so I tore open another pack and added 7 or 8 more packs before I could stop." "Taste it," he said. "Does it taste good?" Xiaoling picked up the cup and took a careful sip. The rich sweet aroma was exactly what she liked. He squinted at her slightly and chuckled, "It tastes so sweet, I don't know how you can drink it." "You." Xiaoling was stunned for a moment, and suddenly realized who he was talking about, her, and her from the previous life. In her previous life, she was also afraid of bitterness and liked to drink sweet things. When she occasionally drank coffee, she would add a lot of sugar to it as hard as she could. "Thinking of the drink stains on his sweater when I saw him last night, it was because he had not allowed her to drink randomly and she spilled the cup when they were fighting for a sugar packet. Now, they are sitting here alienated, as polite as strangers. He will never deny her this or that. He even tears open the sugar packets with his own hands and adds one packet after another until she is satisfied with the sweetness." Xiaoling felt sour and sad in her heart. He also asked the waiter to bring him a cup of Mand coffee, adding 7 or 8 packets of sugar like her, and drank it one sip after another. The heat was rising, and his eyes were hidden in the mist, quiet and deep, unable to see clearly. She remembered that he was very picky and disliked sweets. What's more, the coffee in his hand was not yet at normal sweetness. According to the average person's taste, it was probably already too sweet to be cloying. What happened to him today? I couldn't help but ask him, "Does it taste good?" He looked at the drink in the cup for a long time and said in a low voice, "It's very bitter." Xiaoling stopped talking. There seemed to be unsolvable sadness hidden in his expression, which made her heart also feel sad. She lowered her head silently, not wanting to feel the sadness again. To divert her attention, she drank the coffee in her hand. It obviously tasted very sweet, but suddenly she felt that it was indeed very bitter. Like the bitter past. "Yasin Ling," he called, "can you come to the emperor?" She was suddenly startled, and when she returned to reality, he was still the aloof emperor boss who was full of intentions for her, and she was just an insignificant little artist with no foundation. Xiaoling was very alert. "I'm from Tianyi, Mr. Pei, I'm sorry. I prefer you to call me Pei Xian." He looked at her very gently. "I don't think our relationship is that close." Xiaoling gently pushed the coffee cup away and leaned back. "Do you have any idea how many people want the privilege of calling me that?" He was not sullen. "That doesn't include me." Her tone became cold. "Yes, there are so many people outside who only dare to call him Mr. Pei or Dong Pei. Even people from the Pei family have to respectfully call him patriarch, uncle, or rank. There were very few people who dared to call him by his first name, and apart from his competitors, she was the only one. But now, she wished she could be as far away from him as possible. Didn't he call her Xiaoling again? Yasin Ling, what a strange and polite name. Suddenly, she realized that whether it was him, Feng Kun, or Chu Chen, these old acquaintances would never call her Xiaoling like Li Lei or Wei did. Perhaps, in their hearts, she would always be not as good as Xiaoling. But she and Xiaoling are obviously the same person. Pei Xian, is it she whom the emperor is reluctant to part with, Or is she an illusory phantom? Yasinling, it was still such an unfamiliar name. As long as you are willing to come to the Emperor, Tianyi is not a problem. I will help you handle all liquidated damages and related matters. All you need to do is nod. She looked at him. Why? He said, I admire you very much. Xiaoling sneered slightly and lied. If Pei Ziyan really admired her, how could he send someone to kidnap her and treat her cruelly without mercy? Pei Ziyan, she said angrily, no, you don't appreciate me. What you appreciate is just the phantom in your heart. As soon as the words came out of her mouth, she wished he could refute them. But he didn't. He sat in the dark green leather sofa chair and looked at her quietly, thoughtfully. Xiaoling's heart sank little by little. Pei Ziyan, she said, what you like is not her. But she couldn't say the last three words no matter what. I feel so bad that I almost cry. What is this? Are you jealous of yourself? No, that's not right, Pei Ziyan. Could it be that even Xiaoling is just a phantom? Otherwise, why would he no longer be able to recognize her after she changed her appearance? What do you like? Xiaoling asked word by word with difficulty. Pei Ziyan, have you ever liked, who? End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 179. Chapter 179, Taste in a Previous Life. He was silent for a long time. Just when Xiaoling thought he wouldn't answer, she heard him say softly, I have never liked anyone. She felt a pain in her heart, feeling indescribably empty and disappointed. But he continued, but there is a person, she is a part of my life, and you are very much like her. Xiaoling's heart stopped for a beat. She knew who he was talking about, but, no, she's not. You don't even know. Pei Ziyan, you don't even know that she is beside you, but you treat her as a substitute. Treat cruelly and roughly. Xiaoling stood up and said, thank you for sending back my things, Mr. Pei. It's time for me to go. He called her after himself, Xiaoling. Her steps paused slightly, and she almost couldn't help but turn around. This was the first time since her rebirth that he called her with this familiar title. His voice was hoarse and painful, like countless soft intestines turning thousands of times. However, she can't look back. She never dares to come back to him. Their love is dead. Go back to the apartment. The days passed as usual. After that time, her relationship with Lilei became more subtle. Every day, they still ate together, drank tea, and basked in the sun, but he never hugged her again, and kept silent about those sensitive topics, as if I never saw that scene in the elevator, and there was never an argument in the car. He hides it well. Only occasionally, when Xiaoling looked up inadvertently, she could see his eyes following her, vaguely. Xiaoling didn't know what he was thinking. Did he really not care? Or is it the calm before the storm? She had always thought that Lilei was the clear sunshine, clean and warm, but now she felt that he was the sea. Under the calm and peaceful appearance, it was unknown whether it was a warm current or a huge wave that could tear a person apart. But in the final analysis, this matter was her fault. While he was away, she carried him behind her back and hugged another man. She calmed down and thought about it. With Lilei's identity and means, it was polite enough not to tear her into pieces. On the contrary, he was twice as kind to her. This kind of comfort made Xiaoling feel guilty, and consciously or unconsciously, she began to avoid him. Finally, she found a date for the next concert. She was very happy that she didn't have to face him in the apartment, so she packed her things early and got ready to go. When he walked to the elevator, he found that the door to his apartment was half open. Lilei was drinking tea in the living room, and Mao was lying lazily at his feet. Xiaoling, he called her, where are you going? Singing party, she said softly. It's still early. I'll take you there after dinner. Xiaoling didn't want him to give it away, so she just said, no, I've also made an appointment with a stylist. I need to do some styling first. It will take a long time. Style, he looked at her carefully, aren't you going to wear the clothes I bought for you? She was wearing ordinary clothes today, but she was not willing to wear the cabinet full of high-end ready-made clothes that Lilei bought her some time ago. It was not because he bought it, but because those clothes and her everything I wore in my previous life was of the same brand. That brand is Pei Xian's favorite. That year, I went home with him from the orphanage. Xia Yan put on his best clothes, flowers and green, standing in the elegant hall of Pei Jiaya, like a beggar who was mistakenly entered. She still remembers the secret surprise and contempt in his sister Pei Jingyu's eyes when she looked at her, like a sharp thorn that deeply hurt her young self-esteem. Later, Pei Xian personally selected clothes for her, using soft light rice and grey powder to dress her up in a way that he and his family liked. There is no trace of man-made fiber on Xiaoling's body, and even the slightly gaudy colors and styles are the most original. She looks like a young lady from an ancient wealthy family should look like. Pei Xian was very satisfied. She was just a child at that time and was not used to such a low-key and restrained style, but just because he liked it, she learned to adapt and appreciate it. Later, as time passed, she finally fell in love with them and would wear them every day except for necessary performances. People said that her dress at that time was very tasteful, but little did they know that it was Pei Xian who made it with mountains of gold and silver. He domesticated her and left his mark on her. To this day, Xiaoling can only escape from his shadow by resisting. Lilei asked, you said you liked those clothes very much, why don't you wear them? She didn't know how to answer. Lilei stood up and walked towards her, you look good in them. I like to see you wearing them. Xiaoling, if you can change into those clothes to attend tonight's singing concert, I will be very happy. He rarely asks for anything from her, which is why this request seems so sudden at the moment. Lilei is not Pei Xian, he won't help her take care of everything, and he won't even bother with her clothes and hairstyle to dress her up how he likes. Lilei rarely interfered with her, but today was the first time. Maybe, Xiaoling looked at him and thought silently, maybe she didn't get along with him for a long time before, so it was only today that he finally showed his true colors. This thought made her shiver, and she was afraid for no reason. Seeing him getting closer and closer, Xiaoling took 2 steps back. Lilei's eyes dimmed and he paused for a moment, but for just a moment, he continued walking towards her until he forced her to the steps in front of the safe passage. She didn't check for a moment, her heels hit the steps and she was about to fall down. Lilei quickly grabbed her with his eyes and took her into his arms. Let go, Xiaoling said reflexively. His hand did not loosen. Xiaoling, he looked down at her, his gray-green eyes darkening, why are you avoiding me, why don't you wear the clothes I bought for you? Does my request embarrass you? Xiaoling turned her head helplessly and avoided his sight, not wanting to discuss this issue. How should she explain this? Tell him, Lilei, are the clothes you bought the taste of my lover in my previous life? No, not lovers. At this point, she didn't know who she and Pei Xian were. Their identities were too ambiguous, and they were not even qualified to use the word lovers. Her heart was sour and astringent, but Lilei turned her face, what are you thinking about? You haven't been feeling well recently, Xiaoling, as I said, I can help you with anything, don't be alone in your heart. It's nothing, Xiaoling said weakly, trying her best to push him away and stand up. Lilei's arms were as hard as stone and motionless, then tell me, why don't you want to wear the clothes I bought? Since I came back, I haven't seen you wearing them even once. She was disturbed by his question. Lilei, please let me go first. Answer me first. His grey-green eyes stared at her. I just suddenly don't like that style very much. Xiaoling hesitated. Lie. I don't. You lied, he said firmly. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 180. Chapter 180, Shopping Mall Shopping. Yes, I lied. Xiaoling suddenly became irritated. It's just a few sets of clothes, as for you asking me to get to the bottom of it like this. Lilei, I can wear whatever I like, you are too lenient. Lilei looked at her sadly. Aren't you even willing to tell me the truth now? He tried his best to give her gifts and picked her up and off as much as possible. Even Su Tang said he had done enough. I really can't think of anything else a girl could ask for from her boyfriend. However, he was uneasy and often felt that Xiaoling was too far away from him. She never made any demands on him. She never asked her boyfriend to send gifts, stay with her, or anything else like other girls. It was as if no matter what he did or didn't do, she didn't care. Su Tang said that only when a woman doesn't love a man can she be so calm. These words made Lilei panic. He held Xiaoling tightly. Even when you lied to me, you were so confident. Do you really think that I am your boyfriend? Is it because pay? No, she interrupted him hastily and pushed him away. Lilei looked at her, pursed his thin lips and remained silent. Xiaoling was angry from the bottom of her heart and sneered, you don't want to involve others in everything. Come on, don't you want to give me a gift? Don't you want to see me wearing the clothes you bought? Let's go to the mall and buy 8 sets of clothes. He looked at her for a long time, silently, and took her downstairs. They went to a shopping mall, the best area in the city, but there were few customers and it was quiet and deserted. Walking in, you will see prominent brands, various concept stores and flagship stores. The shopping guide lady is elegant and has a polite but reserved smile on her face. Lilei said, you can choose whatever you like. Xiaoling looked around, knowing that the price here was high, so she didn't want to spend too much of his money. He was her boyfriend, but she didn't want to owe him anything. Moreover, she had just gradually regained her senses along the way. She felt that the quarrel was inexplicable and meaningless, and she wanted to reconcile with him, so she said, it's your choice, I can do it. To Lilei's ears, it became proof that she didn't care at all. Has she really taken the gift he gave her to heart? Because it doesn't matter, why don't you be picky? Lilei's voice was filled with anger. Didn't you say you don't like the style I gave you? If I choose this time, you say you don't like it and find an excuse not to wear it. You, Xiaoling didn't expect him to say such words, and her chest ached with pain. He narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at her. Okay, Xiaoling's anger was aroused again, and the thoughts of trying to reconcile just now were thrown away. You want me to choose, right? Lilei, don't regret it. Before he could say anything, he rushed into the nearest women's clothing store first. Without seeing what brand it was, he stretched out his hand and pulled out 3 or 4 pieces of clothing, this one, and this one, no, wrap up all the others. This lady, the shopping guide was startled, the clothes we have here are all. Why, you think I can't pay the bill? Xiaoling was furious, and now she wanted to quarrel with someone. How about you have a good eye for prices? Didn't you see that there was a big benefactor behind you? You won't ask him for anything, money goes. The shopping guide looked back and forth between her and Lilei, and finally focused on Lilei with a look on her face asking for confirmation. Wrap them all up, Lilei said lightly. The shopping guide lady went to check out doubtfully. After a while, she brought over the credit card machine and the bill. Sir, the total is 764,800. Lilei gave her the card directly. The shopping guide finally had an unstoppable smile on her face. She quickly swiped her card and asked Lilei to sign the order. She suddenly became enthusiastic and said, "Wait a moment, you two. I'm going to pack the clothes." Leave her where she was and look at Lilei. "Go on," he said with some sarcasm, "no need to save money for me, you already said that I am a big benefactor." He dared to spend more money. Xiaoling was aroused by his tone and became even more angry. Well, since he wanted to spend money so much, she would make it happen. Anyway, it wasn't her card that was used. He didn't feel bad about it anymore, so why should she feel bad about it? Xiaoling turned around and left, going straight to the second store. This time she didn't choose at all, she just had all the styles wrapped. Lilei followed behind and just swiped his card to pay the bill, watching her waste the money without blinking an eye. The third house, the fourth house. Xiaoling ran down one store after another. When she saw something selling women's clothing, she entered without choosing anything. This mall is full of big-name luxury stores. After she scanned 2 floors, the mall manager came over after hearing the news and personally accompanied them, showing great attentiveness. In front of the friendly smiling faces of outsiders, Xiaoling gradually lost her temper. What's more, no matter how much money she squandered, Lilei always paid the bill so readily, calmly, and not caring at all. Like a punch on cotton. After browsing a few more stores, Xiaoling gave up without much interest. Lilei sneered and asked, "Are you done?" That tone made Xiaoling have the urge to continue shopping. "Lilei, don't show such an attitude in front of me," she turned and yelled at him, "isn't it just a few bad money? What's the big deal? How much money can a small shopping mall give you? Remember when I..." She shut up, thinking that she was worth hundreds of millions back then, but now, she can't even afford a piece of clothing here. She turned around and left angrily, but he grabbed her. "Let go," she yelled. You two," the mall manager interjected cautiously, "what are you going to do with these clothes? It's not easy to get them because there are so many of them. Do you want me to send a car to take them back?" Lilei didn't look at him and said to Xiaoling, "Didn't you say you want to wear it at night? Pick out a set first and take it to the styling room." She didn't even look at it, she just took out a packaging box and said, "That's it, Lilei, let go." He let go of her and looked at the thing in her hand. "Are you sure?" She lowered her head and looked through the translucent packaging. Something seemed wrong. She opened it, and sure enough, there was a bathrobe inside. It was made of soft velvet and had a very homely bunny pattern. Xiaoling threw the packaging box back and rummaged through the pile of clothes, trying to find something she could wear. Lilei looked at her and said slowly, "Yes, Yingling, you didn't care at all when you chose these clothes. However, you would rather wear them to attend the concert than wear the ones I chose for you at home. Why?" Xiaoling stopped rummaging through her clothes and said, "Lilei, you are done, can you please stop chasing after such a trivial matter? It's a small matter. If it's really a small matter, why aren't you willing to answer me? How do you want me to answer you, cry and admit my mistake to you, or do you want to get evidence that I have someone else in my heart? I never said you had someone else in mind, do you think so?" Xiaoling suddenly stopped talking. Lilei looked at her quietly, his eyes painful and sad. End of this chapter.